Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Jai Janashaka Bhagavan ki jai, Srila Maharaj ki jai, Gaura Premana Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. On behalf of ISKCON founder Acharya A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, I would like to welcome all of you to ISKCON Naperville. Thank you all for coming. Is there anyone here for the first time? Any first timers? Please come and receive a small gift from us. Hare Krishna. Are you together? Oh, thank you so very, very much. Hare Krishna. We'll make our announcements in the end, other announcements, but I'm going to say a few words about welcoming words for our Sunday feast speaker, Her Grace Visakha Dasi Mataji. Please give a warm welcome by her. 20 years old, 1971, before Visakha Mataji met Srila Prabhupada, she was actually her career was growing. She was a photojournalism student and her career was flourishing at that time. Then an invitation from her friend took her to India, and she met Srila Prabhupada at that time, and that completely changed her life. And she explained that change in many of her books, her photojournalism articles, and in so many ways she has expressed that. Most recently, she wrote an amazing book. I have a copy of that here. It is called 5 Years, 11 Months and a Lifetime of Unexpected Love. And there are other books. There is another book, Harmony and Bhagavad-Gita. And there was another beautifully illustrated Bhagavad-Gita book, which I received so many years ago. Amazing, you know. It ran out of copies at that time. I distributed a lot of it. Some of the books are here available. After Mataji speaks, you can check it out at the book table. In addition to that, with her husband, Yadubara Prabhu, she was responsible for producing, both of them together, produced this movie called Hare Krishna, the mantra, the movement, and the Swami who started it all. We have this advertised here on our center lobby, and we hope that all of you have gone and gotten the tickets to see the premiering of this movie in Chicago Theater. It is happening this Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday, this coming days. So, right?
Friday through next Thursday.
Oh, Friday through next Thursday. If you have not received the If you have not gotten the tickets yet, please get and make sure that you watch the movie. And today's topic of lecture is a photographic journey. With that, I wanted to invite Visakha Mataji. Thank you so very much.
I sit up straight.
I will see you.
Okay. All right. Should I chant? I can chant if you like.
I can do it.
Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Oh, thank you. That's wonderful. Hare Krishna. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yasodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yasodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yasodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yasodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Banachari Yamuna Tira Banachari Hare Krishna. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharane Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Vaskyata Deshatarane Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Vyevacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Thank you all very much for inviting me to come to this beautiful temple, which I understand will soon be a magnificent temple right here on the same property. And it's very wonderful for me to see how Prabhupada's instructions for worship are being followed in this very remote corner of the world, a place that Prabhupada himself never came, and yet by his instructions and his examples and the enthusiasm of his followers, this beautiful temple has come up with so many beautiful devotees. So thank you very much. It's very inspirational for me. Tonight, what we hope for your viewing pleasure, is what's called a journey in photographs or a memoir in photographs. And it's my personal journey in life towards Prabhupada's lotus feet, towards his service. It begins many years ago. I called it a memoir in photographs. And from a young age, I had a fascination with photography. This is a picture that I took when I was 8 or 9 years old. And I was really trying to understand the world that I was in, and what I was supposed to be doing in that world, and why things were going on the way they were. So I took pictures of everything in an effort to understand. This is in my father's office in Manhattan. He has his back to the camera, and those are his employees and his customers. And this is in the hometown where I grew up on Long Island. And this really confused me, why women spent their time and money looking like this. This was in the 60s, 1960s, and it was a time of great unrest in America. I participated in many, many demonstrations to try to get equal rights for black people. It really hurt me to see how this group of people was being so unfairly treated. And I participated in many more demonstrations to try to end the very extremely cruel and I thought unnecessary war in Vietnam. And by it became time for me to go to college, so I decided to major in photography at Rochester Institute of Technology in upstate New York. And very quickly I became fascinated with close-up photography. On the right there is soap bubbles, and each bubble is reflecting the window and the sky and the clouds outside. This is another close-up. Does anyone have an idea what that could be? It's a close-up photograph. It's not a pumpkin. It's tiny, something very tiny. Close. These are grapes. Grapes. Those are the stems of the grapes. This is another one. This is red cabbage. Yes, red cabbage. This is some sort of a dried bean pod. Now this one is very difficult. This is advanced. Not banana. This is something you don't see in India so much, but you see it in the West all the time. This is the heart of an artichoke. part of an artichoke. Artichoke, you know artichoke? No? It's a vegetable like this, and you pull the leaves off. So after the first year of college, I thought I'd try my hand at commercial photography. So I went back to Manhattan, and I got a job as an assistant to a commercial photographer. And we did a lot of jobs that summer, but I became very disillusioned with the whole field, because for me, it was very artificial. It was trying to get people to buy things they didn't really need, creating desire where there was no real need for things. So I was very disappointed. I went back to school. I continued the close-up photographs. This is of fingers. And even over Christmas, when I went home, I was taking a picture of a spoon, and my mother looked in the room and she said, "What are you doing?" And she walked in and leaned over, and that moment I took the picture. So that's my mother upside down, reflected in the spoon. Can you see her? She has a white blouse. These are photographic chemicals that have dried. This is a human hair dancing for the camera. And this is one more for you. This is... Yes, it's an organic beet, cross-section of a beet. Yeah. So actually I took this project, which was a term project, and I brought it to a publisher, and they turned it into a book. This is my legal maiden name. And it got some good reviews. Ralph Hattersley wrote for a popular photography magazine in those years. Beaumont Newhall was a photographic historian. And W. Eugene Smith was a photojournalist, and at that time he was considered one of the 10 best in the world. So I thought I would try my hand at photojournalism. So I got a job as an assistant to W. Eugene Smith. And these are some of the pictures that Smith took. I really admired his art, and he also wanted to help people with his photographs. This is one of a series of pictures he took in a leper colony in Africa. He was also a photographer during World War II, and he thought if people saw the horrors of war, they would take steps to end war. So I admired his altruistic nature, but since I worked for him, I got to know him a little bit, and I was very disappointed because he was an alcoholic. And he was not only divorced from his wife, but they had a very estranged relationship, and he wasn't on speaking terms with his children, and he was living with a Japanese woman half his age, and they had a tumultuous relationship. So I didn't want that in my life. So I was still very confused about what I should be doing with my life. And I had met, in college, I had met another student who was majoring in photography, who went to India. And from India, he wrote to me and he said, "You should come to India and join me." He said, "The photography here is really wonderful." So in March of 1971, I went to India. India was a very unusual experience for me, coming from the West. This is something that you never see in the West. And for me, it was fascinating, and yet you see the people around this individual aren't very interested in what he's doing. It was also extremely beautiful, breathtakingly beautiful in different parts of India. This is on the Jalangi River in West Bengal. And ordinary things were done in extraordinary ways for me, coming from the West. Of course, in India, it's taken as ordinary, but for me, it was, oh my goodness. And the animals also were very unusual. I had never seen a hog eating stool before. And I understood, in India, I understood what it meant, the term street dog, because in the West, the dogs are so pampered. But in India, it was just the opposite. And as you know, in India, they use animals the way we use trucks in the West, to take things from point A to point B. That That was also very interesting for me to see. And there were also some disappointments. There were some people who were supposed to be holy but were not acting in a holy way. So it was quite a variegated experience being in India. And after a few months it got extremely hot for my friend John and I, so we decided to go to Nepal. And we started trekking. First we went to Kathmandu, and then we went to a small town called Pokhara. And we started trekking. We had heavy backpacks, like 45, 50-pound backpacks. And we went up and up and up and up. And in the nighttime, we'd come to a small village where the doors had no locks, and the villagers would invite us in. And they would share their vegetable and rice with us, and we had cashew nuts and raisins that we would share with them. And it was quite extraordinary because there was such a welcoming to strangers. In the West, you know, we get these signs, no trespassing, beware of dog. But there they said, come in, you know, in their own language. And we could feel the warmth that they extended to us, and it was really remarkable. Finally, we came to a cow shed that was abandoned when we got to 10,000 feet, which was the snow line. This was June. And we decided to rest for about 3 days. And from the very bottom of his backpack, my friend John, he pulled out a blue paperback and he gave it to me. And he said, you should read this. And that was Bhagavad-Gita as it is by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. So I sat there in the Himalayas surrounded by snow-peaked mountains trying to read Bhagavad-Gita as it is, and I found that I really did not understand it. I loved to read, and I really wanted to understand it, but I just could not understand what this book was about. And yet at the same time I had a strong feeling that this book had some message for me that could really change my life and introduce me to genuine happiness. That from this book I could understand values that would improve my life. So it was a very profound experience, this Bhagavad Gita. Then we went back to India, and as it happened, we went to a small town in India called Vrindavan. And in Vrindavan, it's unique because the residents live by the teachings of Bhagavad Gita. The ultimate teaching of Bhagavad Gita is to always think of Krishna, to never forget Krishna, to please Krishna with our lives. And that's what the residents of Vrindavan do, the Brijbasis. So we stayed there for a month, and that month really transformed me. Because where I had come from in the West, what I learned was that you get a good education to get a good job. Once you had a good job, it meant you had a lot of money. When you had money, you could buy comforts, you had prestige, you might have influence and power. So people went through that process and they got all those things, money, comforts, prestige, power, influence. And yet I felt, at least the people that I knew in the West, there was a certain emptiness there and dissatisfaction and actually an unhappiness that was palpable. And yet here I was in Vrindavan and the people were not interested in education or good jobs or comfort and money and power and prestige, all those things. And yet they had a richness in their lives that I felt was lacking in my life and in the lives of so many people that I knew in the West. So I really had to stop and reevaluate where I was going and how to find happiness, because that's what I was looking for and that's what I was missing. And I saw there's so much beautiful simplicity at how actually we can live without very much and satisfy ourselves and find some richness within ourselves. So it was quite transforming to be in Vrindavan. And at that time, we found only 2 people in the whole city that spoke English. Now even the rickshaw wallahs speak English. But then we only found 2 people. And while we were in India, we had the great good fortune, my friend John and I, to meet the author of Bhagavad-Gita as it is, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we were so moved by the culture of India and by his teachings, Prabhupada's teachings, that both John and I became Prabhupada's students. And then I spent the next 25 years studying his Bhagavad-Gita as it is. And I thought I would really like to try to explain this book so that even a child could understand it. So I wrote and illustrated a Bhagavad-Gita for children, our most dear friend. And by Krishna's grace, this does well on Amazon sometimes. So these are some pages from this book. The Bhagavad-Gita begins when Lord Krishna explains to his student Arjuna that we're not the body, but we're the soul within the body. That from the soul comes life. So wherever there's life, it means a soul is present. Whether it's a bug, or a fish, or a bird, or a blade of grass, or a person. If there's life there, it means their soul is present. And Krishna explains that the body goes through all these changes from birth, and there's growth, and you reach the prime of life, then there's this dwindling stage that some of us are experiencing now, and finally there's death. But the soul is not affected by these bodily changes. Just as Krishna gives the analogy that when our clothes become old, we give them up, and we get new clothes. So similarly, when the body is old and useless, the soul gives up that body and gets a new body. That's called transmigration. Krishna also says, when you understand the soul, you will be joyful and will never forget your higher spiritual nature. Even if great trouble comes, you will not be disturbed. When you understand the soul, you will see that all living beings are part of me, the Supreme Spirit, God. You will see that they are my children and are spiritually equal. And you'll be kind to all living beings, knowing that they are all dear to me. So our personal story continues that we became students of Prabhupada, John and I, and Prabhupada also married us. And we have 2 children. Our older daughter is in the pink dress on the right, running through the grass. Her name is, we called her Amrita, but now she's initiated as Rasamrita. So Krishna also says that everything rests on him as pearls rest on a string, that he is the knower of past and present and future, that he's the source of the material worlds and the spiritual worlds. Not a blade of grass moves without his desire for it to move. There is no truth above him. And he is also the most dear friend of every living entity. So when this Bhagavad Gita for children, our most dear friend, was finished, I thought I'd try one for adults, an illustrated Bhagavad Gita for adults. So I did this Bhagavad Gita, a photographic essay. By Krishna's grace, it was recognized by non-devotees. So this is an illustration from that book. This is my father-in-law. And on the right, he was in his 20s. And on the left, he was in his 80s. So you can see the body changes completely, but it's the same person. And the reason it's the same person is the same soul is residing within that body. Krishna also explains that for those who are embodied, they must experience birth, then growth, disease, old age, and finally death. Anyone who's embodied must experience these material tribulations. And he explains that the soul is called marginal, just like the beach is the margin between the ocean and the land. So sometimes the land is covered with water, and sometimes the water recedes. So similarly, sometimes the soul is covered by the material energy, and at that time we think, I'm a man, or I'm a woman, I'm this many years old, I'm from India, or I'm from America, I'm this, I'm that. And sometimes by the grace of Guru and the grace of God, that covering recedes. And at that time we understand I'm not any of these designations. I'm a spiritual being. I'm part and parcel of Krishna, of God. And I'm meant to try to please Him. Also, there's an analogy that the body is compared to a cage and the soul is compared to a bird. So at the time of death, the soul leaves the body just as a bird will fly out of a cage. So this is my good husband, formerly John. He was initiated, now Yadubara Prabhu, with our younger daughter, Haripriya. And this also illustrates a very important concept from Bhagavad-Gita, that the father gives everything to the daughter. You could say there's nothing the daughter has that hasn't been given by the father. And yet if the daughter takes a simple cracker and offers it to the father with love, the father appreciates that. It warms his heart. He's pleased by that. So in the same way, God has given us everything that we have. There is nothing we have that has not come from God. But if we take flowers and fruits and vegetables and offer them to God with love, He appreciates that. That pleases Him. He's a person, and He experiences our love and reciprocates our love also. Krishna explains in the Gita that there are godless people and godly people who live side by side throughout the world. And by understanding His teachings, we can learn to distinguish the godly from the godless, and then associate with those who are godly, so that we also may become godly ourselves. So while I was doing this project, my family and I were moving to different cities in America for our other work, and eventually we moved to Los Angeles. Because my father-in-law lived near Los Angeles, and he was quite elderly, and we wanted to be close to him. And when he passed away, we thought we could, now at this time, we could move anywhere. So we decided to move to a place in British Columbia, Canada, called Sharanagati. Sharanagati is a unique community. Everyone in the community is devoted to following the teachings of Bhagavad-Gita as it is. It's 1,600 acres, 1,600 acres in British Columbia. And the whole goal of the community is to try to please Krishna, to try to please God. Everyone unitedly wants to do that, following Prabhupada's directives. So my family and I, we got this small house on a small hill. Another unique feature of Sharanagati is that it's off the grid. That means there's no electricity from the electrical company. So under the windows on the right, you see there are two rectangles. Those are solar panels. So they capture energy from the sunshine, and that's fed into batteries. And then we have that electricity. So we had lights, we had computers, we had telephones, we had all those things. But what we did not have was a bill every month from the electric company, because our electricity was homemade. And in Sharanagati, we felt much closer to Krishna's vast elements, the sky and the land and the water. This is a photograph taken from the front porch of our home. That's Lake Sharanagati, shining through the fir trees. And in the back is a hill the devotees called Govardhan. It has a shrine on the top. So I started to write about this experience. The book became Harmony and the Bhagavad-Gita, and it's divided into 4 parts. The first part is Harmony Within. My understanding was that we can't expect to have harmony in the world, harmony in our country, harmony in our society, unless we have some internal harmony. It would begin there. And through the teachings of Bhagavad-Gita, we can understand how to have that internal harmony. One of the early points that Krishna makes is that we must be resolute on this path, this devotional path. There will be so many obstacles. There will be so many ways that our mind may tell us that it's too difficult. So we must be fixed in the goal. In our yard in Sharanagati, we had so many ants, ant colonies, and I saw that when an ant colony was disturbed, there'd be frenzied activity amongst the ants. But they never seemed to get depressed. People get depressed, but ants didn't seem to get depressed. They didn't even seem to be confused, although there was rushed activity. Each ant seemed to know what to do. So there's so many lessons we can learn from nature, that our tendency is that there are obstacles and we think, oh my goodness, maybe I should be doing something else. But the ants are resolute in purpose, so similarly, Krishna asks us to be resolute in purpose in our attainment of genuine spiritual life. And in Sharanagati, we started a summer camp. For one project, we took an old tree and we made 3 logs. We cut it into 3 logs, and we put the rest of the wood through our own wood mill, and we made planks. And so the campers nailed the planks onto the logs to make this raft, and they paddled around on Lake Sharanagati in their homemade raft. And this is our younger daughter. This is her horse, Adi. And part 2 of this project was harmony with the earth and her creatures. Our daughter's in the center, in this homemade hammock in our backyard. And her friends, who are twins, Rasa and Kava, are on the left and right. So in the Gita, Krishna speaks about balance, the importance of balance, because we will always have material responsibilities, material duties, and yet we also have our spiritual aspirations. So we need to be able to balance those so that neither one suffers. The campers found this lizard and were delighted by it. And these campers, they found that if they held a gamsha, an Indian towel, between them, they created a sail on one windy day. So they sailed the whole length of Lake Sharanagati, which is 1 mile long. And when they got to the end, they were stuck. We had to come and rescue. They didn't know about tacking when you go back and forth. So we had to come and rescue them at the end of the lake. So this is part 3. We started with harmony within, and then harmony with the earth and the creatures of the earth. So this perhaps is more challenging, harmony with other people. And one of the topics that Krishna brings up in the Gita is envy. Envy is a great relationship destroyer. It creates the end of harmony. And he explains in the Gita that by making him the center, then we can find unity in our own lives and in the lives of others. One of the ways to do this is by chanting, just as we chanted during the arti. If we all chant with a focus on pleasing Krishna and appreciating others' endeavor to please Krishna, we can overcome this very detrimental quality of envy. This is our daughter on the right, riding her horse Adi and her friend Rasa. These girls each had their own horse and they would gallop through the Sharanagati Valley. So this is the 4th and final part of harmony in the Bhagavad Gita, the wellspring or the source of harmony. And Krishna explains that from him comes an impersonal force called Brahman. You could call it an energy or a light. And then also he is Paramatma, he is the supersoul, the localized aspect of God in everyone's heart. And he is also Bhagavan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is full of all opulences. This was taken from the front porch of our home. When people hear about bears in Sharanagati, sometimes they become very afraid. But in fact, the bears were afraid of people. But when no one was looking, they would come very softly and eat the carrots out of our gardens and take the apples off our apple trees and eat those. So they were a bit of a nuisance. And one 12-year-old resident of Sharanagati, he built this tree house very industrious person. Later on, he grew up, and he and his wife, who was also a resident of Sharanagati, they built their own beautiful home. They now have 4 children, and he is now the president of Sharanagati. The need of the spirit soul is that it wants to get out of the limited sphere of material bondage and fulfill its desire for complete freedom. It wants to see the free light and the spirit. So in Sharanagati, we heat our homes with wood heat that we collect from the forests surrounding the valley. And for water, we found an aquifer at the base of the mountain, and we put a pipe from the aquifer to our home. So the water is gravity fed. We don't need electricity to get water. And here are the residents reading Mahabharata around the campfire, which is near the lake. And this is changing bodies in Sharanagati. On the right is Rasa. The lower picture was taken in the year 2000, and the upper picture in 2011. So there's Rasa on the right. Next to her is her twin sister, Kaba, 11 years apart. In the middle is Kalindi. And with the hat is Gopal, who was the shortest and became the tallest. And on the left is our daughter, Haripriya. So this became this book, Harmony in the Bhagavad-Gita. And by Krishna's grace, it was well received by devotees and non-devotees. So while we were doing these projects, my husband and I also got involved in film. We made about 8 different films about Srila Prabhupada and his followers and the philosophy that he gave us. And I also made a short memoir in photographs, much like this, about my own journey. And after that, I thought I'd really like to understand what happened to me in my life. So I wrote this memoir, trying to understand, because my parents were both atheists. My mother was raised in the Roman Catholic tradition, and when she became an adult, she felt that it was simply ritual with no substance. So she gave up religion, and my father was raised in the Jewish tradition, and he also felt it was simply form, but there was nothing of substance there. So they raised my brother and me as atheists. And I saw that my father worked very hard. He would work 12 and 14-hour days, and he was very good at what he did. He spoke fluent Russian. He went to Russia twice a year. And yet, for reasons completely beyond his control, his business slowly failed. So that was painful to see and confusing as well. I left that world completely. This is John and me in that abandoned cowshed on the mountaintop. Very empty and confused inside, not understanding why I was in the world, what the world was for. I was surrounded by astounding beauty and still very confused. And although everything was very new to me, I was very new to the people in India, especially the children. It was almost like they thought if they stared at me long enough, they could figure me out. But I was very impressed by the culture of India because it was a culture of service, of giving. In the West, I felt it was more of a culture of getting. How much can I get? But in India, I saw the older children serve the younger children. The parents serve the children. It was all about service. And there was a great sense of camaraderie, friendship. You know, in the West, you can live next to someone for years and not know anything about them. And yet in India, there was a community. People knew each other. It would be unheard of not to know your neighbor, it seemed to me, in India. And in the cities, probably the culture is being lost to the Western ways, but I felt it was still very strong in the villages and very attractive. And there was so much beauty in the culture as well. We used to ride the train sometimes for days, and we would take photographs from the train windows about the simple traditional lifestyle that the villagers lived. And in Vrindavan, as I mentioned, it was especially profound for me. I used to sit and think about my own emptiness and the fullness of the people in Vrindavan and wonder at it. And I got this feeling that perhaps because my parents had rejected the spiritual dimension, I had also rejected it. It wasn't really a decision that I made independently. It was just they did it, so I did it. So I was thinking maybe I should revisit that. And maybe I should look at this spiritual dimension more seriously. The dimension of faith that I had categorically denied as unreal and unnecessary. And every day I used to sit with a large group of widows, 150 widows, and they would chant the Maha Mantra. Now today, things have become so perverted that sometimes families will send their elderly, unwanted women to Vrindavan. But in this years, in the 70s, it didn't seem like that at all. It seemed to me that these women wanted to be there. They felt it was a privilege to be able to be in Vrindavan free of encumbrances from perhaps their families, and just be able to focus on something so beautiful as spiritual life, as Krishna and Radha and their pastimes and associates. In the West, I had experienced chanting, but it was such a different environment that I had no appreciation of it. The people were different, the circumstances were different. I was not ready to take it seriously. But in India, just being amongst these devotees who were so devotional, I couldn't ignore the wealth that they had found in their lives. And then from the teachings of Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, it all became very sensible and very logical and very necessary. And by Prabhupada's grace, he introduced these teachings throughout the world. This is Prabhupada's sister, Pishima, who had great love for Srila Prabhupada. And Prabhupada himself would take us, his students, around to the holy places in India. That's him at the head of our bus. He took us to Sridham Mayapur, the appearance place of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Lord Chaitanya, of course, introduced the chanting of Hare Krishna in this age. And Prabhupada, for some time, he spent revisiting the small room he had at Radha Damodar Temple. This is where he wrote the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, and he would look out that very window at the Samadhi and Bhajan Kutir of Rupa Goswami and get great inspiration from that. This is me in another body receiving Gayatri Mantra from Srila Prabhupada. So by Prabhupada's grace, we were able to use our photography to take pictures of him and his followers and the activities of his followers. This, at one point, Prabhupada's godbrother, Sridhar Swami, visited Prabhupada in Mayapur. And you can see on the left there's some hands clapping like that. Those are the hands of Prabhupada's godbrother, Sridhar Swami. They had a wonderful kirtan in Prabhupada's room in Mayapur. Prabhupada also introduced wonderful activities like prasadam distribution. In Mayapur, we had these gigantic walks that the devotees would make khichdi, fresh, hot khichdi, and then they would serve it to the thousands of villagers, prasadam distribution. Now that prasadam distribution goes on throughout the world. And Prabhupada also introduced this wonderful Rath Yatra ceremony. I think you have it in Chicago from time to time. As his photographer, that's me on the left there, Prabhupada, as you can see, in the later years he'd be surrounded by sannyasis, renounced people. And although Prabhupada was very encouraging of our service, sometimes his young sannyasi followers would create difficulties for us. So it was something that we had to deal with regularly. And Prabhupada himself, as his movement spread, he would get letters from his students all over the world with their personal problems or their relationship problems with other students of his, or their difficulties in managing or dealing with the legalities in the city where they were. And although all these came down on him, he never failed to respond to the letters and give guidance and encouragement and inspiration. Today, if you read his letters, practically each one has such valuable instruction for us, and also full of hope that we can do this thing called Krishna consciousness. This is one of his students, Yamuna Devi Dasi. She was a very qualified singer. She sings every morning in all of Prabhupada's temples, the Govindam prayers. She also wrote an award-winning cookbook. It was the first vegetarian cookbook in history to win the Benjamin Franklin Award, the most coveted award for cookbooks. Before that time, it was all non-vegetarian, but when her cookbook came, she won this award, the first vegetarian cookbook to win. And George Harrison, who you see there, he was so impressed by her voice that he said he could make her internationally famous if she would like to sing. And she said she simply wanted to serve Prabhupada. She had no interest in fame and fortune. This is an illustration for her cookbook, Milk and Milk Products. So in 1977, Prabhupada became very ill. He went back to Vrindavan, and the residents of Vrindavan were deeply disturbed, as were Prabhupada's students, by his very frail condition. And then on November 14th, 1977, he passed away. And he left this wonderful legacy, which you all have inherited here in Naperville. So I tried to take all these thoughts and put them together into 5 years, 11 months, and a lifetime of unexpected love. By Krishna's grace, it's been well received. We've got some good reviews from devotees and non-devotees. So my husband and I, as you already know a little bit, we also, the past 4 years, we've spent every day working on this film. Hare Krishna, the mantra, the movement, and the Swami who started it all. It's a 90-minute film that we'd be playing in Chicago starting Friday for 1 week. And we humbly request each and every one of you to please go and see it. For one reason, you might enjoy it. It's one reason to go. So far, when it played in New York in June, and then it played in Los Angeles, and also Houston, and also Boulder, all 4 places the showing was extended because the audience was so great. So we hope also in Chicago, the theater will see there's so much enthusiasm, we should extend this showing. And it's especially meant, of course, we want to give pleasure to all of Prabhupada's followers, but also we want to introduce non-devotees to Prabhupada's teachings. So the film is especially oriented to introduce non-devotees to this beautiful culture and to this personality who introduced it to the West with such purity and such potency. So that's another reason, if you can invite friends, family, clientele, strangers to come and see it, because they can get, from what we've seen from people who have come, they get inspiration from seeing Prabhupada's determination, and they get an appreciation also of his teachings. And there's still another reason, to see the film. And that is that we would like to get it on Netflix. Netflix has a subscriber base of 94 million people. And what Netflix looks at when they try to decide to take a film or not, they look at the attendance in the theaters. If the film has been well received in the theaters. So the more people that go, the more likely that Netflix will actually accept this film and carry it, and then it will be available to an enormous number of people. Netflix won't even accept a film unless it's translated into 20 languages. That gives you an idea of the scope. It's going into all these different countries. So please, our humble request, please make the effort to go all the way to Chicago to see this film. So I would love to have a discussion about these points. Tomorrow is the appearance day of Lord Balarama, so perhaps I can say a few words about Lord Balarama, and then we can have a little discussion with whatever time remains. Krishna, as we mentioned, is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the source of everything, material and spiritual, the source of everything that we see and know and everything that we can't see and can't know. And Krishna expands himself, and his very first expansion is Lord Balarama. It's stated that the only difference between Krishna and Balarama is that Balarama is white, and Krishna is the beautiful blackish blue. So Balarama also expands himself. He has many expansions, and his entire motivation is to give pleasure to Krishna, to serve Krishna. And one of the ways he does that, he expands himself into Shankarshan. Shankarshan again expands himself, and again there's an expansion. It's called Mahavishnu. And Mahavishnu, he's an enormous form of the Lord, and when he exhales, from the pores of his body come universes. This is an expansion of an expansion of an expansion of Lord Balarama, who's an expansion of Krishna. From the pores of his body, when he exhales, come universes. We are in one such universe here. And for the duration of his exhalation is the life of Lord Brahma, who is in the master of this particular universe. So within each of the universes that's coming from the pores of Mahavishnu, he again expands himself, and he enters that universe as Garbhodakshaya Vishnu. And he fills half the universe with water from his own body, and he lies down in that universe, and from his navel this very beautiful lotus sprouts, and on that lotus Lord Brahma is born. And Lord Brahma is the creator of our universe. So for one exhalation of this Mahavishnu, and inhalation is the life of Lord Brahma. And Bhagavad-Gita describes how long Brahma lives, that we have these 4 ages, the 4 cycles of the ages. We're in this Kali age. So when those go around 1,000 times, right, that's one day of Brahma. And again 1,000 times is one night of Brahma. And Brahma lives for 100 such years. And that is one exhalation of Mahavishnu. And when he inhales, all the universes come into him. That is the end of this. One time Prabhupada was giving a lecture in Calcutta, and he was saying the Mayavadis, they try so hard, they have such severe austerities to try to merge into the body of the Lord, that if they're just patient, if they just wait till Mahavishnu inhales without any difficulty, they can enter into the body of the Lord. So this gives us a little hint totally beyond our conception of the greatness of Lord Balarama. Also, it's described that we know that Kamsa was committing terrible atrocities. He was actually killing the babies, the infants born to Devaki and Yasoda, to Devaki and Vasudeva. And so during the 7th pregnancy of Devaki, Krishna decided that this child within her womb would be transferred to the womb of Rohini, another wife of Vasudeva. So that transfer And that child became Balaram. So he is 8 days older than Krishna. And after he did that, after he was transferred, then Krishna appeared within the womb of Devaki. So the name Balaram, Bala means strength, and Rama means the highest bliss. So this strength does not refer to spiritual strength. It does not refer to physical strength, it refers to spiritual strength. Balaram refers to spiritual strength. And that spiritual strength can give us the highest bliss. And Balaram, it's understood, is the original spiritual master. So, from his strength, from the strength of Balaram, which is coming through the spiritual master, we can overcome the modes of nature, passion and ignorance and even goodness, and come to the transcendental position. So there's so much more to say about Lord Balaram. We were learning about him just in the seminar that Chandra Moli Swami was giving, that he killed 2 demons, Dhenukasura and Pralambasura, and these demons represent different unwanted things in our hearts. Ignorance is one, the desire for profit and prestige and adoration. So through the instructions of the spiritual master, we can overcome these unwanted things by the grace of Guru, by the grace of Balaram and Krishna. So I think we're supposed to end at 6:30, and it's just about 6:30 now. Perhaps there's some discussion about these various points, I hope. Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
I have a couple of comments and a question. Your experience is nothing short of being legendary, especially with the association you've had with the legend like Srila Prabhupada.
It's a legend.
We're extremely fortunate to have
Hare
you here
Krishna.
with us. The other comment I had was to do with one of the photographs that you had, one of your first initial experiences in India where the person had his head stuck in the ground. And after having spent the last 31 years here in the US, it's not just in India, but I see we're still stuck with our heads in the sand, even now. Nothing's changed there, the world over. The question I have is, if there was one moment that resonated deeply within you during your interactions with Srila Prabhupada, what would that be?
Well, as I mentioned, I was engaged in photography in Prabhupada's service, and Prabhupada spent a lot of time in Juhu, which is just near Bombay. There was trouble with that project, getting it going, and so he was very relaxed there. So he spent weeks and weeks there, and he used to enjoy every morning walking along Juhu Beach. It was just a 2 or 3 minute walk from the temple, as it is now. And so I would go every day to photograph him every morning. He would walk from 6 to 7 and come back to greet the deities. So one morning I was waiting for him. I had my camera. It was still a little bit dark out at 6 o'clock, and I was chanting while I was waiting, just sitting like this on the path, chanting japa. And Prabhupada came very softly, so I didn't hear him at all. And he passed by me just inches away, and as he passed by, he said, "Thank you very much." And I thought, well, what is he thanking me for? I'm just, And then I thought, oh no, I'm chanting japa. And Prabhupada's appreciating that. So that really moved me, because it's an instruction that he gave to all of us. And if we follow that instruction, he appreciates that. I think to everyone who chants japa, he will say, "Thank you very much." So, thank you. Hare Krishna.
Do you still live in Saranagati village?
We have a home in Sharanagati. That home with the solar panels is our home. But we made this film in Alachua, Florida. So we've been there 4 years. Yeah.
How many people in Saranagati village? Is it a large number? What the community size there?
I think it's about 50 people. Yeah.
Thank you.
There's a school there. There's a small school for students.
Thank you, Mataji.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much for your attention.
I was just going to request if you have a short trailer of the movie that you wouldn't mind showing for a few minutes.
If we have Wi-Fi, I could show it.
We do.
Maybe we could just plug this into the Wi-Fi? Is that right? Well, it might be faster if you just plug it into yours. Is that possible? Otherwise I have to put in the password and all that stuff.
Password is easier one.
As you like.
Because already set up.
Okay, okay. Let's see. Yeah, well, first I have to. Oh, okay. I think I have to get out of this to. Yeah, that's what I was wondering.
Oh, not here one.
Yeah, I know. I just have to get out of this thing.
I think someone is getting their laptop or something.
Okay. So, I have to go to. Okay. Yeah. Want this?
Yes. Huh?
Plug-in is
And you play from there. We'll get it from here. Still mute. You have to take the mute off. It's showing mute there.
Someone told
Start from this.
my spiritual master is calling.
He said that he would like to go to America.
I said, are you crazy?
The old man, you are going to die.
someone told you the story, you wouldn't believe it.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare.
He's 70 years old, he has no money, he's starting an effort, and it turns into an international movement.
Everyone is thinking, I'm American, I'm Indian, I'm European, I'm Australian, but I'm not this body. I am spirit soul.
He looked like the Prime Minister of the galaxy.
Prabhupada was quite unlike any teacher we'd ever known. There was no gap between what he spoke and what he lived.
The Vedic scriptures gave some sort of backbone to my life.
People were joining left and right. Everywhere people went, there were Hare Krishnas.
Many would consider members of the Hare Krishna sect to be dangerous religious fanatics, but the Krishnas say they're simply misunderstood.
People would kidnap us and try to deprogram us.
The more he got attacked, the more energized he became. Prabhupada loved a good fight.
He was actually bringing some kind of ray of light to the right place.
Regardless of race, of religion, of nationality, we are all brothers and sisters.
If I see this person, this soul, struggling just like I'm struggling in my body, I have a reason to love you. That's deep.
His words carry so much power. It's a full expression of his heart that comes through.
Of this life is to understand oneself. This is the beginning.
Thank you so very much, Visakha Mataji, and also for giving a short insight into your books and your experiences with Srila Prabhupada. We are extremely grateful. Please give a big hand. It's so wonderful to have devotees association like this, very rare opportunity that we have today. But Visakha Mataji will be here a little longer, and on August 8th, Tuesday, Visakha Mataji will be speaking on the topic of Memoirs of Srila Prabhupada here at 7 o'clock. And so we invite all of you to please come. All of the books that Mataji has written, plus some nice t-shirts, some CDs, all of this is available here. You can contact Prema Tarangini Mataji once I finish my announcements. Also, on August 9th, Mataji will be giving a class at a home program. It's not listed here. I'm not sure whose house it is. Home program is where? Okay, you can contact Shatrupa or Pratul. So please come, we invite you. Also, we have the association of His Holiness Romapada Swami Maharaj. He will be visiting us from August 10th through 12th. The program details will be on our website, or again contact Shatarupa. Okay, we will put the information somewhere on the website too, I guess. There are a few other announcements for today. One is regarding Janmashtami. As you all know, this year Janmashtami is on August 15th. Haribol. And Sri Sri Radha Shyamasundar will be on the altar from August 13th through 16th. 13th is a Sunday, and 14th, 15th and 16th we request all of you to come and take their darshan, and please bring your family and friends. We look forward to seeing you here. Janmashtami coordination as usual is done by Sumangala Mataji. She has asked me to make these announcements. Many service slots are still open, and if anybody is inspired to offer any services, please contact her. For deity service, for those of you who are first initiated, as well as someone else who can do some peripheral service, you can contact His Grace Krishna